I'm Cesar Delgado from Back Roads of Illinois. I am joining with Ed Usset from the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. How are you been, Ed?
I'm doing very well, Caesar. Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me on your program.
Kicking off with our conversation with conab from Brazil and Barish from World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate report on this month. Could you explain to the audience about the both report?
Well, the latest figures I've seen for conab concerning the Brazil crop are in line with the WASDE report of February. Conab, I believe, is at about 155 million metric tons. WASDE is 156 million metric tons. And just for perspective to your listeners, that's like 5.7 billion bushels of soybeans, which is much bigger than our 4.2 billion bushel soybean crop. Those are disappointing numbers compared to what Brazil had in mind 6, 8 months ago when they had greater plantings. A year ago, they were 162 million metric tons. And
Are
I thought,
you kidding about it?
pardon me?
Are you kidding about it?
No, I think when we think about South America, Brazil, we have to see the whole picture of Brazil and Argentina. So Brazil's crop is a disappointment, but Argentina's crop was a disaster last year. They're coming in with twice as big a crop at 50 million metric tons. And the whole picture in South America is pretty good. Yes, Brazil's got they're looking at 155 million metric tons, but their shortcomings will be offset by an increase in Argentina.
How do you see the acreage report on March? What is your thoughts about this acreage report from the Department of Agricultural?
Well, the March report comes out at the end of March, but you know what? We're going to get a sneak peek at that later today or tomorrow because the February, the USDA February Outlook Conference is happening today and tomorrow, or tomorrow and Friday. I apologize for not being sure, but they'll put out preliminary numbers. The March numbers will be based on an actual survey. And so all eyes are going to be on this Outlook report that comes out in the next day or two. They already released information on what they thought about. USDA is thinking in terms of a trend line yield. They've got 183 and a half bushels in for corn. So I expect personally, Caesar, I think we're going to see a few more soybean acres and a few fewer corn acres, modest changes, couple million acres more, couple million acres less, totally based on two things. You've got good soybean prices relative to corn prices on new crop. It favors soybeans. And I'm also aware of three big crushing plants that have opened this year. And that's going to attract some soybean acres near those plants.
It's always tomorrow, and in Washington, D.C. for the World Agricultural Economist, firm at one.
Yep. The Ag Outlook, this February Outlook conference has become a very big deal in the last decade, and it's our sneak peek into inside the mind of USDA and where they think we're going.
would you like to go to tell our listeners about these commodity prices, especially on the corn market is down at 4.30?
Well, it's even lower this morning, Caesar, another 4 cents lower. I looked at it earlier. Very disappointing. These are life of contract lows. But I will tell your listeners that I've gone back 20 years and I've looked at the high price for new crop futures in the months of April, May, and June, the AMJ high, and I compared that to the January high in corn and soybeans and wheat. And I can tell you in the case of wheat, we've taken out that January high in 17 of the last 20 years. And the exceptional years, one of them was 2020, the year of COVID. So am I reasonably confident that we'll find a way to rally in the months ahead? Yes, I am. Do I know why prices will rally in the months ahead? Oh, that's what makes commodity markets so interesting. I don't know what will get them to rally, but something will.
What is your sources of information about the conab from Brazil? Could you tell to our listeners?
Uh, I'm not down in Brazil. I've never traveled to Brazil. I don't have any insiders on the site. I tend to take conab and USDA WASDE reports. I put a lot of weight on them. USDA is notable for sort of dragging their feet to adjust small crops smaller and large crops larger. So there's a little bit of a bias that maybe the production reports will drop a little bit more in the months ahead, but not a whole lot more. We've got a pretty good handle on where those crops are going. So I'm comfortable with the conab numbers.
Do you have any final thoughts on Brazilian production and World Agricultural Economic Forum on tomorrow afternoon?
Well, once again, on Brazilian production, I remind all listeners that the increase in Argentina from last year in soybean production will more than offset the disappointment we've had in the Brazilian crop. So we're not going into a short, the soybean crop's not as big as we thought it would be worldwide 6 months ago, but it's a good crop. The agricultural forum, the put on by USDA, this February outlook, it's a big deal. We like to take a look at that. They've already released their ideas of trendline yields in the year ahead, pretty big ones. We'll be very interested to what they think about planted acres in corn and soybeans. And they go as far as to put out a balance sheet. It's preliminary, but we can take a first look at, do they see stocks building or declining in the year ahead? And that starts to set the tone for price direction.
Thanks for coming, Ed.
Thank you for having me.
This is Ed Usset from the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, from back roads of Illinois. Have a good morning. See you on this afternoon with Peter Muck about commodity markets.